Janet lived at Al-Wathiq Square, 52nd Street in Baghdad, Iraq, just down the road from us, in a big house with her 4 unmarried siblings, all of them over 70. She often walked over to visit, her presence filling our home with an endless stream of words. She spoke in the same tone, story after story, as if afraid of silence. I quickly realized she didn't have many people who truly listened to her. At first, I was fascinated by her non-stop talking, merged stories with no clear beginning or end, a flowing memoir of her life. But as time passed, I sensed something deeper, a loneliness woven into her words. My mother, though hospitable, was excited to introduce me to Janet the first time she came by. However, over time, my mother struggled to sustain Janet's long visits due to the non-stop chatter. After a few visits, she made it clear that she could no longer entertain her. That was when I became Janet's friend. Instead of inviting her inside, I would stay outside listening to her, day or night, whenever she passed by. We would stand the whole time, and she never once complained. I listened, nodded, reacted with facial expressions, or offered brief comments, tiny pieces of advice, here and there. Most of my comments were ignored, but sometimes, when I interrupted, she would pause, open her eyes wide, as if trying to grasp what I had said, then reply with a thoughtful, before resuming her monologue as if she had never been interrupted. Sometimes I wondered if she was even talking to me or simply thinking out loud. But I sensed her need to speak, so I stayed, offering her what little I could, my presence, my ears. Minutes would stretch into an hour or more until my mother would eventually call me back inside. We never ended the conversation by choice. Over time, our relationship deepened. One of the stories Janet loved to repeat was about her only married brother, Neil, who lived in the UK. He had 2 kids and often sent large parcels filled with food and clothing to his siblings. One day, she gifted me a beautiful pair of golden cross earrings from one of Neil's packages. Tiny, easy to wear. I cherished them for years, until I lost them while moving from one country to another. Each time I wore them, I thought of Janet and silently sent her love. Once, she confided in me that she struggled to clean her room, especially under the bed, as it was hard for her to reach. I gladly offered to help. I visited her home and met her siblings. Their house carried the air of forgotten time, its corners heavy with age, while cleaning her brother Fred appeared to say hello. Something about him unsettled me. His wide, distant gaze filled me with an inexplicable fear. I told Janet I was too scared to return because of Fred. She understood. Months passed, and though I never re-entered her home, we still met at our main gate, standing on the street side, while I listened as always. Her voice was loud enough to the whole neighborhood to hear. I often gestured for her to lower it, but she couldn't, poor thing. My mother's patience wore thin, and after a while, she'd call from inside, "Gemma, get back here," signaling to me to end our talks. But for me, listening was the way I expressed my love and care. One day, Janet came to our house crying. Her sister has been hitting her. That day, she had someone to cry to. My heart ached as I listened, my mind racing for a way to help. I was just a teenager. What could I possibly do? Confronting her sister was out of the question. Yet, from a deep desire to ease Janet's suffering, I found myself improvising. While she sobbed, I interrupted her. "Hey, listen! I know a lawyer!" She paused, her tear-filled eyes turning towards me with sudden interest. "Where is he?" she asked. I glanced upward and pointed to the sky. "God!" I said. "He loves you. He will take care of you no matter what. Go to the church. Tell him everything. Complain, shout, cry your heart out. He's a much better listener than I am, I promise." She absorbed my words in silence. I was young, but I believed with all my heart that God was what she needed. The situation was beyond me, but I knew that no matter how big a burden, God takes care of everything when we ask. A few weeks later, she returned smiling for the first time. That day, my mother needed my help in the house and asked me not to spend time with Janet. I went outside ready to tell her I couldn't chat, but before I could speak, she stopped me proudly. "I had a shower. I'm wearing my new bra, and I'm heading to church. Now I talk to God." She nodded, waiting for my reaction, excitement shining in her eyes. I was speechless. Pride swelled in my chest. She had found her way to him. For the first time, I saw peace and happiness radiating from her. "I'm so happy. I'm proud of you. And you look great," I told her, my face saying even more as I gave her a big warm hug. Seeing her happy gave me peace. Over time, Janet's visits became less frequent. I wasn't worried. Not long after, I traveled for a month. When I returned, I learned that Janet had passed away. I was sad I hadn't been around, but even now, I tell her story with joy, knowing she found solace before she left this world. Yet a small sadness lingered. I had never returned to clean her room. The guilt stayed with me until one day, my friend Rosa told me something profound. God reads our hearts like an open book. It is said that when you sincerely want to do something but are unable to, He counts it as if you did. Intentions matter. That day I felt relief. My love for Janet had been real, my efforts sincere. And today, when I remember her, I put my hand on my heart and thank God that despite her long suffering, she was in the best hands at the end.